from $100 to $13 million in 2 years. This is the first-person account of Dan Conway, an ex-middle manager in corporate America who made a fortune betting his life savings on cryptocurrency. How it began. On a gray morning in 2016, I left my office in downtown San Francisco and walked down to Montgomery Street to Wells Fargo. I swiveled open the 2 gigantic doors, walked up to the counter, and explained to the teller that I needed to send money wire to Gemini Trust Company, LLC, a cryptocurrency exchange based in New York City. "Certainly," she said. "How much will you be sending today, Mr. Conway?" $100,000. My voice sped up as I said it. $100K. This represented my family's entire life savings. It was money my wife and I planned to use to pay for our 3 kids' college tuition, our eventual retirement, and emergency expenses. I was a middle-aged guy with a family who had never been on the cutting edge of anything. But I was about to bet everything I had on an unproven virtual currency called Ethereum. This could only end 2 ways. I'd lose everything I owned, or I'd make a fortune. Up to that point, my professional life was one of quiet desperation. I was a 45-year-old middle manager at a major multimedia company in San Francisco. Though I earned a respectable $150,000 per year, I hated the fake company culture, the bureaucracy, and the endless chains of command. He was fed up with fake company culture and wanted flexibility and freedom. Like so many others, I was looking for some kind of escape. And soon I found one. One early morning in mid-2015, before anyone else was in the office, I was browsing online, stumbled upon an article about Bitcoin. I'd heard about Bitcoin years earlier, when I was preoccupied with climbing the corporate ladder. Back then, it seemed ludicrous to spend money, real currency, that I could hold in my hands, on some digital token that existed on a public ledger in the cloud. To be frank, I thought it was complete bullshit. But that morning, I had a sudden change of heart. The Bitcoin the article read was going through an especially rough patch. Its price, which was in a constant state of volatility, had fallen from a high of $1.2K in 2013 to $300. My mind raced. What if it goes up again? What if I put everything I had into this? Part of me recognized these thoughts as destructive mania. My addictive personality had landed me in trouble before, first with alcohol, then with harder drugs. My 12-step sponsor wasn't going to pat me on the back and say, "Go buy that Bitcoin, Dan. Sounds like a fantastic plan." At the same time, my wife Eileen and I were raising 3 children and had a big mortgage on our home in the Bay Area. The Great Recession had snatched away most of Eileen's PR consulting clients. We were privileged, of course, but money was tighter than usual. Sitting in my empty office, I began to go down the crypto rabbit hole, and the more I learned, the more I was pulled in. Dan changed his heart from Bitcoin to Ethereum. Through early research, I gravitated from Bitcoin to Ethereum, or ETH, and then newly launched coin that debuted in July 2015. Blockchain, the technology underlying Ethereum and other cryptocurrencies, promised to one day decentralize corporations. As TechCrunch wrote, it would offer the stability of an organization, but without the hierarchy. Seemed almost too good to be true, but a lot of smart, future-forward people were getting behind it. As a disenfranchised suit and tie, I was enraptured by the possibility of a decentralized future. As a greedy speculative investor, it gave me a rush. In short order, I developed an Ethereum obsession. I listened to Ethereum podcasts while walking the dog. I read about Ethereum during every spare minute I had at work. I rejiggered my Twitter feed to follow mostly Ethereum-related accounts. I absorbed hours of Ethereum commentary on YouTube. My biggest source of conviction was Ethereum's developers. In the 90s, I'd worked in PR at Macromedia. The company's product, Flash, had dominated the web graphics market after catching the attention of most of the forward-thinking web designers. In the same sense, the smartest developers were now flocking to Ethereum. Occasionally, my Ethereum fever broke, and I wondered if I'd gone off the deep end. Was my growing desire to invest in Ethereum a desperate attempt by a desperate man to find some kind of midlife salvation? Was this whole thing some kind of elaborate ruse to scam people like me out of their nest eggs? Most of my friends in tech, folks working at places like Google, Apple, and Uber, were dismissive of blockchain. Few of them had heard of Ethereum. When I told a buddy of mine that I was considering investing in cryptocurrency, he broke out in laughter, as if I had admitted I was hedging my future on Smurf berries or Scooby snacks. But my mind was made. I was going to put everything I had into this. The bumpy start. Unfortunately, it wasn't long before I experienced the earth-shaking volatility of the crypto market. In June 2016, a high-visibility project was hacked, and Ethereum tanked. By December, our original $100,000 investment was worth less than $40,000. Though I was $60,000 in the hole, my confidence in Ethereum was stronger than ever, and it was now at a bargain basement level price. So I decided to double down. We didn't have the cash. The only pool of funds available was the line of credit on our home. Racking up a big debt on our home equity line would very likely set us up for an unhappy ending. But I felt in my bones, this was my shot, and I might not get another one. In December of 2016, I visited Wells Fargo 3 times, transferring an increasing amount of money from our home equity line to Gemini. After each transfer, I went home and bought ETH slowly, so I didn't cause a run-up. The order books were thin with limited liquidity in those days. A rush of sales could cause the other traders and their bots to snatch up all the available coins. That winter, I borrowed $200,000 on my home and used it to buy more ETH. I now owned 26,750 ETH total, at an average buy-in of $11.21 per coin, and I was $300,000 in the hole. The turnaround to a millionaire. In February 2017, during our first negotiated trip of a lifetime to Mexico, Ethereum came back to life. It was the middle of the night, and I was in the back of a cab, battling a nasty bout of food poisoning. I was puking my guts out, foaming at the mouth and delirious. But I didn't care, because our ETH was up $50,000. We were in the black for the first time. Then something miraculous happened. It kept going up, and up, and up. Between February and March of 2017, ETH shot up from $15 to $50 per coin. By April, it was at $70. By May, $230. In the span of 4 months, my $300,000 investment ballooned to $6 million. My coins were now worth millions, but I continued to hold the majority of them. This decision would soon pay off in a bigger way than I ever could have imagined. The final sell. I watched the price climb to $915. Then, over the course of 2 hours, I sold 11,000 ETH, the majority of my remaining stack, for $10 million. I sent Eileen a text. We're done. Shortly after we cashed out, the cryptocurrency market took a nosedive. Ethereum dropped from a high of $1,396 in January to $385 in April. By December of 2018, it was back below $100. Eileen and I paid off our $950,000 mortgage. We booked a trip to Africa like we'd always dreamed. Hell, we even bought a second home in Ireland. Nearly 2 years later, it's still surreal looking at our bank account and seeing high 7 figures post-tax. It all happened so quickly. It feels like a dream.
That's all for today. If you have any question regarding crypto, do not hesitate to reach out to us in the comments section. To continue enjoying more of our crypto videos, kindly subscribe to our channel. Do us a favor by liking, commenting, and sharing our content with friends or across social media channels.